See, the thing is, these ideas of spirituality that people are espousing, is that spirituality is some kind of human invention. It has nothing to do with humans. AI is a human invention. It does have something to do with humans. It's a mirror that reflects the human condition. And it's a mirror that can sort and move and sequence things much, much faster than the human brain can. And we've invented many of these things in our technological life. You know, you can only move your feet a certain number of footsteps per minute, and then you invent a bicycle, and you can do this the same number of footsteps per minute, but the bicycle can transport you at 40 or 50 kilometers an hour, and your feet can't possibly do that. Then you take the pistons of an internal combustion engine, and they move at this amazing speed, and now you can move the whole vehicle and the body at 100 miles an hour, if the laws permit. Don't violate speed limits. And, you know, now we have that technology. And there were people at every change, at every transition of technologies, there's people who are woebegone. Oh no, oh no. The iron horse was what trains were called. The iron horse is going to completely destroy the world of horses. You know, New York City, and around the turn of the century, was generating 60 tons of manure and horse urine a day. 60 tons. And where did it all go? Downhill, in whatever downhill fashion it could possibly go, into the waterways around New York. And the waterways in New York, in order to get the urine and the horse fecal matter into the waterways, they had to use straw. And the straw was designed to absorb as much of it as possible and make it transportable so you could push it and sweep it. But it's said that in some places in New York Harbor and on the Hudson, the straw and manure and urine were floating 6 feet deep on top of the water. And flies were a major, major problem, and all the airborne diseases that came from this. Even so, there were people who were decrying the advent of the iron horse, the train, or the horseless carriage, the automobile. Oh, terrible, terrible, terrible. This is the end of humanity, our great relationship with the horse and the 60 tons of manure and urine. Dead horses in New York City were also thrown into the Hudson River or into the harbor, and sharks were a major problem because sharks came for the carcasses. Something that you've never read about before in New York City. You know, the problems of wading knee-deep in straw filled with urine and manure down the middle of Wall Street. So, was it the great terrible thing? Evidently not. You know, and then next thing that happened, instead of ring, ring, dial, dial, you know, hi, and, you know, hang on, I'll have to call you back because I'm in the kitchen and I have to hang up and run up to the bedroom where the other phone is. You know. And then somebody started to invent, you know, modular mobile phones. At first they were a joke, and then they started to be taken more seriously. People would say, "Do you see that guy walking around with that big brick? It was, you know, an analog phone that you can dial and all that. What a, you know, show off. Walking around with that big brick. I'm never going to have one of those. It's just such a show off thing." And then gradually they moved from being analog to cellular, and then there were the little snap phones, and then just about everybody got one. But you still had to have a separate computer to go online with, and then you had this phone, and back and forth, snap, 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 snap. And if you wanted to text somebody, you had to press buttons 5 or 6 times in order to get the correct letter. Some of you were born after that, some of you were born during all that. And everyone said, you know, when the iPhone got invented, that's the end of everything. Oh no. And people were saying, I'm never going to have one of those. I don't do cell phones. I don't do iPhones. I don't do email came before that. I don't do computers. Don't do? Come on. Yes, you do. You will, you are, and now you have some kind of cellular device in your pocket right now. You're watching me on the device, for goodness sake. And everybody was terrified about it. Oh, it's going to bring an end to the whole of humanity. This AI is just some new way in which we're advancing the speed with which we can do things. What does it have to do with spirituality? Well, if it can reflect back to you your own innate spirituality, then it's a good thing. There's no way I would ever have been able, prior to the advent of digital technology, to speak to as many people to whom I'm speaking at this exact moment if this technology hadn't been invented. And yet there were people at every stage of the transition into it who were saying, it'll be the worst enemy of humankind. The worst enemy. Can you imagine anyone being able to go on a telephone they hold in their hand and watch some recorded thing on a thing called YouTube? Ugh, who wants that? And yet here we are. And here we're going to be. You watch, mark my words, 5 years from now, the doomsday people will all begin quietening down as they start making use of AI. And then 10 years from now, what is it now, 2033, everybody will be using it, and absolutely so delighted that it was all made capable and engineered properly. And there'll be some downside, just as there's downside with iPhones. There's downside with all devices. There's downside with anything that is a labor-reducing device, something that allows us to do less and accomplish more. If we don't become more inventive and more creative, there's always some downside, but only for those who lack imagination. So, as regards spirituality, anything that communicates ideas with greater speed and efficiency is going to be an aid in the exploration of spirituality. Spirituality ultimately has to do with learning how to transcend thought. To what extent can you actually step beyond thought and experience being, the underlying field of pure creative intelligence, the source of the human condition? AI is not able to do that. It's not able to transcend. It's not a consciousness field. It's a reflective field of programming that reflects the current state of the human condition, and is able to mirror it back to us, but to do it at great speed and with, some certain degree of efficiency. If your job is able to be replaced by AI, then you deserve it. Because you weren't using your full human creative potential if your job is able to be replaced by AI. You need to stay ahead of innovation, not be a victim of innovation. See, this is what we're experiencing right now in the coal mines of the world. Everyone's shouting out, it's terrible, keep coal going. And the whole world is saying, no, we need to stop the pollution that's coming from burning coal and making electricity and heat from burning coal. But the people who are saying, no, coal has to continue because my job is coal, those voices will start dwindling away, and eventually they'll disappear as other more efficient ways of creating heat are explored and exploited. And so let's not be one of the voices of resistance. It's okay to be a voice of temperance. All things in moderation, including moderation in moderation. We need to awaken our own full potential. If we're afraid of AI, Let's stop using 2% of our brain. Let's stop being 2%ers and start being 100%ers. Practice Vedic meditation and get to 100% use of your available brain power.